Hi, everyone. Welcome to Soulprint Intuitive Tarot. Thank you very, very much for being here. Alrighty. So, uh, a couple things. First, this reading is I'm going to do tarot card reading, and we're looking at Trump's trajectory. What's going on with him, what we can anticipate, what we can expect. On Wednesday, I'm going to be continuing that, but with a channeled message. And the reason for that is that it's sort of the hyper focus on him is that things have been going just terrible, like truly terrible for him. The whole generals meeting and the nonsense at the United Nations, and apparently this past weekend, he's been banished again. No one's seen him. So, but apparently there's a lot going on True Social, and it's more outrageous every day. On Tuesday of this week, um, Prime Minister Carney is going to be in Washington. That's going to be interesting since, again, Trump has started with the whole 51st state nonsense. So that's why I'm hyper focusing on him this week. I want to see what's going on. There's a lot of talk about October being a very difficult month for him, a dangerous month. And I wanted to just see if I can drill down on that. Also, just so people know, I am currently able to book private readings. I have a couple the week of the 13th, but in Canada here it is Thanksgiving on Monday. But I have a couple of openings there, and I've got openings on the following week, the week of October 20th. So if you're interested in a private reading, if you go into the drop box below the information box, it will give you an address, soulprint888 @gmail.com. Just send me out a quick little message saying I want reading information. I will send you back everything you need to know. Alrighty. Um, Anything else? I don't think so. As usual, my gratitude and my thanks for, there's so many YouTube channels out there. And lots and lots of them have way bigger followings. So I'm always really touched and honored when you choose to spend some of your time with me during the course of the week. Don't forget to put your questions in the comment section below, and I'm going to stop rambling and let's get on with this. Here we go. Trump October and beyond trajectory. Trump October and beyond trajectory. Trump October and beyond trajectory. I don't know if you heard. Apparently, when he went to London for the disastrous meeting with the king, um, he wanted to take him some sort of a sword, um, and wherever the sword was housed, um, they said that you can't give this away. It belongs to the American people, and you just can't remove it and give it away. Well, the person who said that has now been fired. So obviously, Trump is being his most rational self, and everything and anything that doesn't make him happy, he's just gonna blow off. Okay, all right. It's interesting because the first couple of cards he has here are actually quite good cards. And what it actually leads me to believe is that the delusions are deeper than perhaps we thought. So he's actually starting off with the Six of Wands, which is, typically it's a card about recognition, about attention being paid, about, people focusing on you. Sometimes it's about, congratulations. The problem is that the attention and the focus is not good. I mean, you now have like mainstream media like MSNBC and CNN um, talking about the fact that we're not sure if he's actually fit to govern. He's not well. He's not doing well. He's not making any sense. Like, give our head a shake, right? It only took, 10 years, but they're finally stepping up to the plate and think like something is not right with this guy. And so the kind of attention that's being paid to him is not necessarily the kind he wants. But we have to remember that, Trump is one of those people who says, what is that old expression? It doesn't matter whether the publicity is good or bad as long as they spell my name right. So he's sort of kind of the opinion that as long as he's in the news, that's a good thing. Now, this is an interesting card. You've got the Two of Cups here. Normally, this would be a card about relationships, working together, partnerships. Well, it is. But unfortunately, this is representing um, the Epstein situation. Okay. So this is about more and more of that information continuing to come out, continuing to get leaked. I think that over the next few months, you're probably going to see um, more people, more women coming forward. And there's a book coming out. I'm sorry, I have forgotten the victim's name, but she left the earth, but she left behind sort of a memoir or a tell-all book. Um, and I think it's coming out at the beginning of November, but I could have that wrong. If anybody knows for sure, please put it in the comment section below. Okay, so he's doing what he's doing, but he doesn't seem to be able to distract enough to divert attention, or certainly not divert attention for very long away from this. And like, honestly, this is one of those situations where it comes back to bite you in the butt, because he wouldn't shut up about releasing these files because it was all full of the horrors of the Dems and what terrible people they were, and on and on. Oh, wait a minute, no, there's nothing to see here, nothing to see here. Well, what is left of his base, which, make no mistake, is diminishing all the time, they're getting really annoyed because he basically promised them that. Um, but he promises stuff all the time. He promises not to touch their health care. He promised to make the economy just amazing and booming. And the fact that he keeps saying stupid things like trillions of dollars are pouring in, yes, but they're pouring in out of the pockets of the people of your country. Right. So he's just, we've got the page or the Knight of Wands here, right? And this is sort of what's going on with him, right? He's like charging ahead. He's talking to talk, and it's not, it doesn't make sense. Okay. And you can see the figure in this, on this, in this card, is like, in armor from head to toe. I mean, the face is uncovered, which doesn't surprise anybody because, of course, he wants that face of his everywhere. Um, but the rest of him seems to be somehow protected. And I can't help but wonder if the protection doesn't have to do with some of the people around him, and if it doesn't have to do with, more importantly, hiding what's going on under the armor. So what's going on within the body itself. Five of Swords. So, it doesn't matter what he does, how he tries to divert attention, who he attacks, who he goes after. Um, it's not it's not creating the kind of distraction that he wants. And so what happens when that happens is out comes the Hierophant, right? Out comes the I am ruler of, never mind the United States. I decided I'm ruler of the world and I'm going to tell everybody how to conduct themselves. And I want what I want and you give it to me. Apparently, um, the rooms that he was in at the palace when he was in London were literally left in shambles. Um, just disgusting. And yeah, for some reason, I seem to think that I've heard that about people who also deal with his personal spaces within the White House. Um, he seems to have a complete disregard for um property, other people's property, being mindful of the privilege that surrounds you with those kinds of priceless treasures. Apparently, it's irrelevant to him. So you can anticipate more of that sort of in your face, I'm ruler of the world kind of behavior coming from. The problem is that more and more people are looking at him and going, your emotions are right out of control. What's interesting is that Queen of Cups, you can expect, probably as the whole thing ratchets up with the files, that he's going to continue to attack and insult women. um And I get he's right. Guess he's right there with Hegseth, who doesn't want to see any women, in the services, because they're just not up to snuff. Um, which is kind of ironic coming from a low-ranking, whatever the heck he was when he was in the services, and a glorified teleprompt reader. But anyways, he's now in charge of whatever that department is. But there's going to be more attacks against women, about women who um, he doesn't like, particularly if they're not white and beautiful. He sent the person that he sent to sort of go after Comey is she's stunning and she's beautiful, but apparently she's making mistakes that like a first year law student wouldn't make. So, if you're not up to his standard, he will attack. And you're going to see more and more of that because as things continue to unfold, his ego is going to keep on taking hit after hit after hit. And he can't handle that. I mean, the narcissism is just um beyond all previously known boundaries, which were outrageous to start with. The hanging man, right? Look at the focus on the head, right? The focus on his thoughts, what he's thinking, how he's behaving, what he's saying, what he's doing. And more, he is sort of hanging himself up. That expression, like, give somebody enough rope. It sort of has that energy to it. It's a feeling of uh, like running in place and not getting anywhere, and more not being capable or willing to change your perspective so that you can see things from a different place. He is now completely encapsulated in the bubble, in his bubble, the bubble of his own making. And in that bubble, there is absolutely no stopping him because he measures success and he measures abundance very, very differently than most of us do. Perhaps, maybe it's more in line with the, I don't know, top 1%. Apparently, the top 1% combined income has now hit something like, I think it was $53 trillion this year, or their worth is has now hit that marker. So the thing is he doesn't care what he destroys along the way. Sort of look at this card inverted, right? The opposite of abundance and growth and new beginnings and new start. Well, for him, it's destroy everything in my path. Don't don't give me anything new that doesn't, conform to the way I see the world and the way I think about things. And so I have to say, it looks like going forward, we're going to see more and more of that behavior. Well, what's going to happen is, oops, it looks like he's going to start really, really getting pushed to the side. More and more, you're going to see him like detaching from reality, detaching from his role, um, because he's not a president. And I'm not even going into the whole election, non-election. I'm talking about his demeanor and his ability. He's not presidential. He wants the pomp and circumstance. He wants the admiration. He wants to sign things with this frickin' Sharpie, but he doesn't realize, or he's failing to realize, that he is not um in step. Okay, he's not reading the room. And what you're going to find over the next, I want us to, well, from now until sort of the end of the year, but certainly in October and into the beginning of November, it really, really feels I have got to get Kathy Beale on here, because there's a lot of stuff going on. And I think we could all benefit from another visit with her. I'll have to make sure I reach out to her. Um, but it feels like certainly for the next 5 or 6 weeks, you're going to see more and more Republicans pulling back and separating themselves and stepping away because their careers, their livelihood, their reputations are now being really, really negatively impacted. And the reality is, when people are annoyed with the president, they take it out in the voting booth, and they're not just voting for the president, right? They're voting for all of those other government offices. And if you have an R behind your name, you may very well find yourself in a very, very difficult position because people are fed up. And more you have Trump voters who have finally started to come to the realization that the things he said and the things he promised are not happening, are not coming to pass. And the only ones who still believe that they are people who are also so completely immersed in that bubble of misinformation that it's craziness because their own pockets are being depleted and impacted, and yet they still refuse to see that he's the one causing the problem. But you know what? At some point, and it's not that you push these people away, it's not that you say you're crazy and I can't talk to you, but at some point, there has to be the recognition that we all, um, there are consequences to the actions or inactions that we take. And sometimes we really, really need to shake up our belief system, and just make sure that it's still in keeping with how we're feeling and thinking about things. So again, he's surrounding himself with people who will, yes sir, but even they are starting to like roll their eyes behind his head and going, what the hell's going on with this guy? Like, he's just not making any sense. He's flying off the handle. He's yelling and screaming and swearing and throwing things. He's like out of control, and they're trying to contain, literally, um, like a tornado whipping through the Oval Office, right? And they can't contain it. So 5 of Wands, you've got people around him who are now bickering and infighting. And it has always been the case with his administrations that there's more backstabbing than you know what to do with. But it's becoming amplified because those people who felt that they were making or breaking their career are starting to recognize that their jobs are in jeopardy. There is no loyalty high enough to keep you safe from this guy. Um, and there is a lot of leaking going on, a lot of fighting going on, a lot of gossiping going on. That's all going on around him as people are trying to um, figure out, understand, comprehend what's going on and how they're supposed to be dealing with it, for goodness sakes. Alrighty. Judgment. The judgments are coming and they're becoming harsher and harsher and harsher. He is he's literally just becoming a babbling fool. Um, and I guess nobody's brave enough to tell him that that's not only what he's behaving like or acting like, but that the world has now just decided to laugh at him. And the judgments are harsh and they're going to be long raging. And that is the sadness of all of this, is that it's not just him who's going to be penalized. It is the country that's being penalized. Because when you live outside the country and you're looking at it objectively, one of the first things that you think about is, well, they voted him in. And again, I'm not going into the was it stolen or were votes manipulated. From the outside, you're looking at it saying, well, apparently enough people bought his line of trash. And so at some point, you, you know, you made your bet kind of feelings. And listen, and it's not the individual Americans that people have an issue with. It's sort of like the collective. And you and I, we know that what is going on isn't right, it isn't legal, it isn't healthy, it isn't even sane. But you can anticipate him continuing to react as the judgment continues to pile up. And they're going to become more vocal. I mean, when you have sort of more mainstream media starting to talk about the fact that what he's saying doesn't sort of make sense, right? Um, that's not a good time. And the last card is the devil. So this pertains, um, it, very often the devil is about greed and that, but it also represents addiction. And I don't believe I've ever read this card for him, meaning that, aside from the fact that there may be some drug interactions that are causing certain behaviors or reactions, um, the addiction that he has, the primary addiction, is an unending need for attention and approval and adoration. And there isn't enough of it to ever satisfy him. What was the name of Mary Trump's book? Too much is never enough. That's exactly where he's at. So it doesn't matter how much is heaped on him, it's not enough. It's not good enough. And that's where you see this sort of like retaliation that's going out. You can literally stand beside him and say, you're the most amazing thing that God ever created. That is, of course, unless you're actually God, and we just haven't figured that out yet. And 10 minutes from now, he doesn't care what you said. He just knows that it wasn't enough. And I have to say, energetically, it feels in some ways like the biggest demon that he is personally fighting is this sort of ongoing um need that is just not ever satisfied. Wow. You know, I I am so sorry that is what, like, your country, the United States, but by extension, the whole world has to deal with right now. Um, and he's not well. There is such a obvious decline that you can't even like compare, compare who he is today to who he was a year ago, 2 years ago, 5 years ago. There's just it's like a complete disconnect, right? There's nothing that you can point to back then and say, well, except maybe for the orange spray tan, that hasn't deteriorated, that hasn't gotten worse. um and, he's not as robust. He doesn't have the energy. He's talking in a monotone. He's rambling away. He's not well. But as long as the people in that tight inner circle continue to allow him to stay in that bubble, um, unfortunately, for right now, it's going to continue to roll out. Um, so here we are. That's what I know right now. That's what the cards are telling me. Um, it can't go on forever. It can't. Um, when somebody is on that much of a self-destruct course, at some point they hit the wall. And that's what he's on. I mean, whether he, of course, people that are on self-destruct courses don't recognize that that's what they're on. But that's what he's doing, right? He's destroying everything in his path because this insatiable need for recognition and adoration and praise isn't rolling in fast enough to keep him satisfied, and there isn't a fast enough that could keep him satisfied because he is just in a bubble that is spiraling out of control. All right. Thank you very, very much for being here. It's going to be interesting to see what information comes through for the next reading on Wednesday, when it's channeled. That should hopefully give us a few more interesting insights. I did do a video talking about October, and it's going to be a bit of a crazy month. So I again remind you to take good care of yourself, keep your health, physical, mental, and emotional, your priority, and, you know, trust that together there will be enough light created that it will be able to contain and remove the high volume of lower vibrational energy that's zinging around right now. Okay. Thank you very, very much for being here. Until next time, take care and be well. We'll see you soon. Bye bye.